right, everyone. I believe we have some individuals on the phone. Trustee Guzman?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And Council Malich?
Yes, President, I'm here as well.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody today. My name is President Garcia Morales, and I'd like to call this work session of August 2nd, 2023 to order. The time is 4:06 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence the electronic devices. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land in which we gather here today is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Let's go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to move on to item 1.02. That's the adoption of the agenda. Trustee Zamora.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Revised reference materials provided for item 2.01, professional development training from the Council of Great City Schools, and revised additional reference materials provided for item 2.02, Assembly Bill 175 of the 82nd session of the Nevada Legislature.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. I will second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Zamora, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. We are now going to move on to item 2.01. That's professional development. Hi, little human. We are grateful for the sounds of little voices in our boardroom. We're going to move on to item 2.01, professional development training from the Council of Great City Schools. On the phone with us, we have AJ Krabel and Ben. Ben, forgive me, you're going to have to remind us of your last name. Yes.
Ben Mackey.
Mackey. All right, Ben Mackey. And colleagues, as I introduce this item, I want to just note for the record here, we've been provided some additional items that have come with this packet, with this item. You'll notice one of the first items is the implementation timeline. That's something that Ben worked on after meeting with members. This is also a summary of essentially the next 2 years of this work, specifically when it comes to some of the priorities that we've discussed as individuals in our one-on-ones. I've also included a sample Council of Great City Schools professional service agreement. This is not specific to CCSD because you see that there's some items here that do not have a district name on it, and AJ's resume as well. Colleagues, and I want to thank specifically Trustee Cavazos for encouraging these items. I'm sorry for not getting these earlier to us, but incredibly grateful for her inquiry, which I believe helps us have a better, robust conversation today. Colleagues, this item is not an action item. I do want to note that for the record here. I'm hoping that today's presentation by Ben and AJ will be more of a help us answer any specific questions that we may have about the timeline, about the sample agreement, and then my goal as we move forward with this work is to bring an action item to the board in the coming one of the coming regular meetings, so that we can begin this work immediately. Let's see. At this time, I want to turn it over to Ben and AJ to give us some additional context to the timeline and any other items in this presentation packet.
Yes, thank you so much, President Garcia Morales. It's great to be with you all tonight to talk about the work the Council of Great City Schools has been doing across the nation and would hopefully do with Clark County if you see fit. So my name is Ben Mackey. I am with the Council of Great City Schools governance team. Unfortunately, AJ Crable, he may or may not be on. I know he's had a number of other things, but I should be able to be in good position to introduce this item, kind of go over what it entails and answer any questions that you have about this or the process generally. So a quick overview of how we got to this point. I believe we started this conversation back in the spring. Myself and other members of our governance team met with all individuals of the board as well as the superintendent to get a sense of, the broader perspective about the work happening in CCSD and what the hopes were to move forward and continue to look at to improve and change and move forward. Since then, we put together a set of consensuses from what we heard from all of those conversations, which was shared and discussed with the board back in June. And then based on this, we're in the midst of another round. I've had the chance to speak with almost everyone. I've had one more conversation on Friday of this week. And from this, our goal is to put together an implementation plan of which you have a first draft of tonight that we'll talk through. For what the work would likely, our recommendation for the work would likely look like in Clark County over the coming 2 years. We usually set it up for a 2-year timeline because it is generally a lot of work and a lot of items there and takes a lot of discussion from the board to find consensus and move forward on a lot of this. So with that, that's what we are presenting to you today. I am looking forward to any feedback you have, questions you have on it as we kind of walk through it. But overall, there's a couple big sections of the timeline. But before we even get to the sections, I want to touch base on just some of the consensus elements that I have heard over and over through multiple folks on the board. And ideally, hopefully, what we've pulled together here as far as the priorities that we've heard from the board have been echoed by everyone I've spoken with. And so there were 12 major items that came up in these conversations that I just want to ground us in. The first is this: any implementation plan should be built to include a development of shared language and clarity around priorities, goals, and governance roles for the district, et cetera. Second, an intentional investment in team building and relationship building, both across the board and through leadership. Third is deep community engagement and outreach to inform any priorities and direction. And this is something I heard echoed across every single conversation I had as a real value on community engagement and what does this look like, both engagement and outreach. 4 is to identify shared priorities for the district and the board to focus on, and how do we orient new members that come through. Number 5, to establish and explain the path we're on to the wider community in a way that gets buy-in and hears voices from the community. Number 6, establish a system for how to monitor accomplishment of priorities and increase data availability. Number 7, to monitor progress openly and transparently, both to the board and the wider community. 8, to codify governance training for new and prospective members, including any appointed members. 9, to review policies and practices, including where time is spent, how the agenda is used, how we set that up, and what the purpose of those elements are. Numbers 10 and 11 is an evaluation plan for both the superintendent and the board to make sure that the district is tracking towards its priorities and staying focused on what it is deemed the most important. And finally, number 12, ways to continue to build trust with each other and the wider community. So all of these elements fit into this implementation plan, of which there are a number of major phases. So I'm not going to go through line by line, though I'm happy to answer questions on all of them. But I am going to talk about each phase and what those phases look like. And so should the board decide to move forward with this implementation plan or an adjusted version of it, the first phase is around discovery and norming, really getting on the same page with shared language and what this will look like, setting up the structures that the board deems that it would want to have in implementing any of this going forward, whether it's going to have a committee to run this, whether it's going to run it as a whole board, et cetera, is really this first phase. The second phase is then establishing and developing clarity And this is something we heard echoed a lot, almost from every single conversation. And so this phase takes the board and the superintendent, the leadership team, to go from getting community input. So it includes a lot of community engagement up front, defining what that community engagement looked like, how to get a true, authentic sense of the wider Clark County community, and what they would hope for priorities. And then how do we distill that into a clear set of goals and guardrails or priorities and values that the community wants to see and what success looks like. So once the leadership team gets that community engagement, they will go through a process to set those priorities, and then communicate back out continuously with the community and within the organization internally about what those look like, and create the clarity on what is most important for Clark County going forward into the coming years. Then the third part is, how do you build processes and practices around that? So reviewing agendas, thinking about board policies, thinking about committees. How do we set up a cadence?
Ben.
Yep.
Hi, Ben.
Go ahead.
Allow us just one moment, please.
Sure.
Hi, Mom. We're concerned about our little human safety. What's your little human's name? Legacy. Mom, do you have a public comment for us? Yes. Okay, very good. It's going to be a couple minutes before we get to public comment, but just know that. Oh, it's going to be a little bit. Dr. Rafalski can help you. She's behind you. Thank you. Ben, thank you for that quick pause. I believe we can return now. Thank you.
Okay, and so just a couple more elements. So again, we started with the norming on this process and setting up the structures for the process, establishing clarity, which is scheduled to take about 5 to 6 months, though the board can obviously change those up depending on what the needs are. It can be longer or shorter, but the goal here is then to establish and clearly communicate the priorities and values of the district and how it's going to be looking for success in those over the coming years. The third, where we left off, was around the processes and practices that help effectuate district focus and cohesion around those priorities. So thinking about alignment of the budget with those priorities, how do you monitor those priorities regularly and publicly so the wider community and board members are aware of them? How do you think about your board procedures, your board agenda, whether consent, non-consent, et cetera? How do you adjust those in a way that all points in the same direction as those priorities? The next part is around setting accountability. How is the board going to hold itself accountable? And how is the board going to hold the superintendent accountable to achieving those priorities? If those are truly the most important priorities for the school district and the community, then we've got to hold ourselves accountable to accomplishing them. So it involves thinking about a board of self-evaluation process, the superintendent evaluation process, looking critically at how we use time in board meetings, both publicly and community meetings, to be able to communicate progress on those priorities. And then finally is how to continue to communicate and engage the wider community authentically. This includes about this process and the setting of the priorities, of course, but community engagement just doesn't stop then. It's an ongoing thing. And so how do we get on the same page about what the expectations are for wider community engagement and what are those systems? And how do we effectuate that over the coming years so that the community isn't just brought in at one particular point for one particular purpose, but they are authentically understanding the processes in the district's progress on those priorities. And that includes both just general community members, but also potentially prospective community members who might want to run for board or advisory committees, et cetera. So those are the 5 areas. I know there's a lot of fine print and small specifics about what those steps entail, But I do want to pause there and just see what questions you might have, anything that I can answer around those, and of course, take any feedback on that as we go forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that insight, Ben. Here we are. I'd love to open the floor up to colleagues that may have questions at this time regarding the implementation timeline and what the timeline is built to include. Okay. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Ben, for your presentation. I'm very excited to see that there are some words on paper for the implementation plan. And my question is, and this is probably for the seasoned members on the board, if number 11 is an evaluation of ourselves and for our employee, does that fit our timeline of when we're going to need that information to get our work done? I hope that that makes sense, but I'm not sure if it fits. I thought it would be sooner in the process. So that's my question, not necessarily for you, Ben, but for our seasoned leaders.
Well, and I can definitely just clarify what I mean by number 11. This is referring specifically to the board evaluating itself and whether the board is adhering to the priorities. So if the board sets the priorities of we want to focus on X, Y, and Z, is the board spending time and are there actions actually matching those priorities? So this is the board setting that evaluation process for itself to revisit, not so much an actual evaluation process for employees.
Although, Ben, you do also have we've discussed having an evaluation of ourselves and of the superintendent. And I believe, Trustee Bustamante Adams, you're speaking to specifically the superintendent's evaluation timeline. Is that correct?
Yes, there is a superintendent evaluation. Sorry if I misunderstood that question. That is around once you establish priorities for the district, you would, of course, want to align what your expectations are and how you'll evaluate the superintendent in alignment with those so the actions can follow what we've communicated. And so this support does include designing that process in a way that clearly showcases and focuses on what CCSD has determined to be the priorities, and that it's clear for the superintendent and that it's ongoing. It's not something that just happens once a year and is done, but almost in an ideal world, every month you're getting seeing the progress towards those priorities, and that's all filtering up and cascading throughout the evaluation.
And Madam President, thank you. So I understand that, but my question is, does it meet our timeline? And I don't know when we do the evaluation. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Trustee Williams. Give me 1 second while I turn your mic on. Here we go.
Sorry, I don't have a lot of questions, Ben. I think I know what Trustee Bustamante Adams saying. Hey, Ben, we are contractually obligated to give the superintendent evaluation parameters by a certain date period for his contract. And I think that's what Trustee Bustamante Adams is asking. Does it meet that timeline going with his contract? Because we understand the concept of what you're saying. We agree with it wholeheartedly. We want to make sure that we are in alignment with our one employee's contract.
Yep, I got you. Thank you for that clarification. And yes, it does. We're actually in that specifically. I have 3 line items around the superintendent evaluation process. The first one would start immediately, which is develop and codify what the process would be for the superintendent evaluation this year. So then it can meet all those timelines, the dates of it this year. And then it involves a second phase is once the priorities of the district have been set, then it involves looking at the superintendent evaluation for future years and aligning it with those priorities, which would be then implemented the following year. So it includes both making sure that you meet all requirements this year and then give space to determine if you want to keep that evaluation process or how we align it to the priorities that you set and then implement that the following year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Trustee Zamora, I see you have, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Ben. Ben and I actually had really good conversations. I really enjoyed my time talking to him. I just have two questions. The first one, I just want to clarify. On this timeline, we have 2 steps completed and 1 on track. All this is being done at no cost?
I'm going to jump into that piece, Ben. I hope that's okay. There is the agreement provides some additional insight in terms of the expenses. So the last time we met in June, the June work session, and I went back, just to be clear, about, to listen to the presentation that was shared at the time from the council, specifically from AJ. We were, we did not have an agreement, a draft agreement at the time, but he mentioned there was there were 2 things that would happen. One is if the board decided to move forward with this process and then did not fulfill the agreement, they did not fulfill the obligations of the timeline, did not carry this work forward. Specifically, AJ said on the record that if this work did not, the board decided to move forward and then they did not accomplishment or like finish it specifically, we would be charged $150,000. However,
and
he said, no, yes, Ben?
Yeah, I would just want to jump in. There is no agreement in place. All of this is just discussion and framing out what it
That's
could
fair.
look like.
Yes, and
So the
right.
things that say complete, that's part of our work with any board that wants to even explore this process at no cost. CCSD has incurred no cost and would incur no cost unless a agreement is signed. And so that would happen, once and again, the purpose of this is to take feedback on this. We can adjust the implementation plan to what the needs are. And then should an implementation plan and contract be executed and the board says we do want to move forward on this, then that's when the cost would go into effect. So, and what you're describing right there is the council contract. Again, you would be contracting with the council of Great City Schools. And it is a substantially lower rate for a board that follows through on the plan because a lot of the services actually offered at an under cost because the council believes in it. However, if a board weren't to complete it or terminate and decide we're just done with this, we're not going to continue to actually do what we said we wanted to set out to do, then it would be the higher cost. And I believe that's what it's referring to.
Ben, thank you for that. I also want to point out that there was a little bit of disconnect in terms of what was shared at the last meeting and the last presentation versus what is being shared here in this draft agreement. I agree with you. Nothing has been charged to CCSD at this time, and I appreciate that we're exploring this without going into cost associated. But the rate here is for a 2-year term is $60,000 if a school board. $40,000 if the school board votes this in unanimously. That was not mentioned at the last presentation. It was $40,000 and not there was no mention about the unanimous piece, which is new information based off of the agreement. Trustee Zamora, do you have more questions?
Yes, I guess it would be one for you, Madam President, of your timeline of when you want to put this for us to be able to vote on it. Do you have one?
I do. I would love to, it would have to wait until the 24th, meeting on the 24th, because we just posted today's meeting, the August 10th meeting today.
Okay. And then my second question was, how are we implementing some of the work that PCG did into all of this? Because, this in a way seems really repetitive. And then on the timeline, there's things that PCG already has done and has recommended, and we've already done the work. So kind of want to see what that looks like.
Thank you for that. And I can come to the next meeting where this is presented with additional details to help you see the work that's moving forward. A lot of the PCG work has been, and a lot of the feedback that we received from PCG was more operational in nature, and the superintendent, I know, has been working with his team to implement some of those pieces, including this upcoming agenda, which you may notice some changes in terms of the text describing particular items. Maybe that's not true. Okay. Dr. Jara, please chime in.
Madam President, members of the board, trustees, a more great question. Yes, if you recall, I think part of the big portion of the PCG was on the district's operational. So we started immediately working with them on the implementation, on the alignment to customer service and different things that we saw. The portion for the board, so we've contracted them already to start working and helping us moving forward. Now, as far as the board portion of the PCG, we'll turn that over to the board president and then incorporate that into some of this. But just know that it was money well invested for PCG because we started doing that already, the operational side. And I think all of that will, as we move forward, it'll come together once you start looking into the community conversations around strategic plan, what happens with, is it Focus 2024 or Focus 2026, as we start moving in that direction. I think all of it will start, it looks like a little muddy right now, but it'll start all coming together.
Oh, forgive me, here you are. Go ahead.
No, I definitely agree, Dr. Jara, about PCG and the work they did. I really appreciated that we did spend the funds to get them to do the report they did because they were here on the ground. They had local folks. They really did a lot of good work of talking to our teachers, our staff, our admins, and they were very intentional and also meeting people where they are. So thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Hello, Ben. Nice to talk to you again, even if we can't see you. I wanted to
I'm on camera this whole time.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on something on that Madam President just said. And, this is a lot of information that we just got yesterday, but I know that all of us tried our best to kind of incorporate it and internalize it. I wanted to follow up on something that you had just said that had really not occurred to me as like a top thing right now, but you had stated that when we had talked about the costs and before, that we didn't have that component until we saw the agreement today, unless I missed something, that if the vote is unanimous today, but we're not really, today is a discussion item, right? Okay, so when we do have the vote, and I think you said the soonest could be the 24th because we've already posted the 10th. So would that be something that we would be able to have under trustee business and not under the consent agenda? Because I know there's been, that would enable us to have further discussion without having to ask you, to pull a specific item.
I think that's a fair request.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. I might have a question about that afterwards, but I want to give my colleagues time to ask questions too. The other thing that I wanted to ask just at this point in time in our discussion is, so basically, if we kind of agree to the timeline, the goals, what we're trying to do here, and especially involving, the monitoring, is this basically taking us to a new governance model? Is that taking us to a new governance model?
Great question, Trustee Cavazos. This is not a new governance model. This is helping us to take our existing governance model and fine-tuning our, listed here in the implementation plan, development of shared language and clarity around priorities, things that engagement in terms of the community. It's more operationalizing our governance model and really finding ways to, as a board, prioritize our own ongoing learning and evaluation of our role and responsibilities as Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Madam President. I was asking because I know we just had the, this was a lot to kind of get all at once. And I know that we just had that link there that then went to more information, but it was not, all laid out. I just want to say that at this time, I might want to come back to a further question. I don't know if this would be something for board council or just maybe just a general discussion, with us, ourselves. about the issue having to do with the unanimous vote. I would want to check into that a little bit further because I've not run into that type of issue before. And I would want to check into like the ethics or, you know, how that exactly works, because I wouldn't want the public to see that we kind of like agree on all the basic tenets of this, that it's a good thing, you know, to go forward, but then say that I vote no, or Trustee Zamora votes no, or somebody votes no, and it's like, they just cost the district, you know, $20,000, and it would end up being more divisive and, you know, instead of being collaborative. And I think collaborative is what we're aiming for. So thank you very much, Madam President.
Great point, Trustee
And-
Cavazos. Yes, Ben?
May I? Yep, just real quick. I just want to echo that point. What we provide is not a model. Simply, it is a framework to help a board accomplish what it most wants to accomplish. And so what we provide is the project management, helping to keep on track, advice and what we've seen in other kinds of districts implementing this kind of work. But our goal in this is to help you all implement your priorities in the way that you see fit. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then as a note to the previous point about the administrative recommendations, those are things, if you would like to share them with us, we can work those into the implementation plan or not. Those are all opportunities, because that's what we're here for, is to kind of adjust this implementation plan to make it as specific to Clark County as possible.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Ben. I feel that the timeline definitely has tasks that align with many of the complaints I've heard about the board. There are definitely activities I think the board needs to undertake. I think it's a lot of work, and I'm definitely willing to put in the work, provided that my peers are also dedicated to doing the work. So if there is any hesitancy, or back to your point about collaboration, if this is a process that you cannot jump into wholeheartedly, then I would prefer to know now versus putting in the work. Just, this is two-term trustees talking here. I don't have the energy as first-term trustees. So if you're not going to do the work, just please let me know now. And then one just comment about the plan: the state has a very, very short attention span. And my fear is if we drag this out too long, we're going to lose momentum, and we will lose one person at a time along the way. And is there a way to have a more aggressive timeline? Because we definitely need to do these, but I think we need to do them in a more hurried fashion.
So from our perspective, we can absolutely accelerate the timeline. That is all totally up to the board and what you all decide. That's where kind of in that first phase in the norming, we have like really codifying who on the board perspective is going to be leading this work. Is it the entire board? Are you going to appoint a committee to kind of drive this work forward? Our job at the council is to help make sure that we are moving through those checkpoints appropriately. And we can move through them at whatever pace the board wants, though obviously time constraints, getting around, having community meetings, you know, you have to have some scheduling time in there between that. So we can adjust this to whatever the board's desire is and whatever the board is willing to work to implement those at that. And again, just to be clear, because I know there's been some questions about the contract and fulfilling it, et cetera, our goal is that you all are able to accomplish identifying these priorities. We can adjust the timeline throughout the entirety of the engagement. So if we're moving faster on something, we can then speed other things up. If we're moving slower, we can slow it down. It's not about sticking to the timeline word for word. It's about accomplishing the priorities that are outlined in it.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to second what Trustee Zamora pointed out. I do think that some of this work we might have more progress in some of these areas than, you know, these initial interviews they've discovered. So I think given that, we probably could make this timeline shorter and map this out a little bit differently.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Ben.
I've
Thank you.
noted that for sure.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Thank you, Ben. Trustee Cavazos?
I wanted to, thank you, Madam President. I wanted to see if any other, colleagues, if they hadn't had a chance to speak, if, instead of going forward, because I just had a brief question that I forgot.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Guzman, do you have any questions for Ben at this time?
I do. Thank you. Hi, Ben. It's good to talk to you again. And thank you for your time last night. I wanted to talk about your implementation plan, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Just kind of looking at some of the vocabulary that's utilized. Like on number 7, you put cadence to monitor progress openly and transparently to board and community. When you're talking about cadence, are you talking about the pacing in which we do it? And then is that also reflective in your timeline?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're referring to is in an ideal world, you've created clarity where if you said, this is your priority, we know we're going to get updates on whether or not we're meeting that priority on this amount of time in this format. So there's no surprises and it's not haphazard, but it's really planned. That is on the timeline. And so what that looks like is obviously you must first set the priorities. And then if you look at in the development area for processes and practices, we talk about developing a draft monitoring calendar. So this is thinking about, okay, we've set priorities now. How are we going to monitor them? When are we going to look at them? If the board sets a priority around 3rd grade reading or a value around retention of staff, when does that get monitored? And how do we know what we're looking at so we're on the same page with that? And so what this includes is developing that draft calendar and support, practice monitoring those items and what the kind of questions and are people asking, how to really get to the heart of whether or not something is being accomplished. And then eventually the ideal is the way it's set up on this calendar is for that to start happening the following school year. So we would do the design of that calendar after the priorities and practicing this year with implementation in the next school year.
Great. And then President Garcia Morales, when he's talking about monitoring, would that then fall under the agenda for as part of our student outcome monitoring when we're going through these priorities? I'm just trying to see how we streamline all of this.
It's a great question, Trustee Guzman. I suspect that our current timeline may need to be reevaluated so that we are able to monitor the things that we're hoping to accomplish or seek outcomes for. So that may mean bringing that policy back to the board and reevaluating it based off of the information that we're hoping to gain. And that's where the board would, again, engage in, hey, the policy, the calendar needs to be updated, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I can't hear everything, so I'm going to repeat back what I heard you say, if that's okay. So we're going to reevaluate the policy based on and update it based on the calendar that is being proposed. Is that what I heard you say? I'm sorry.
Yes, and I believe your question was regarding the placement, where we would be placing this item on the agenda when we're getting monitors.
Yes, that's correct. Because I mean, that's when we would monitor it, right?
That's correct. It would be in the same place of strategic plan monitoring updates that we currently have on the board agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other thing that I had, Ben, and I'm maybe I'm jumping forward too quickly, but when we're discussing the contract, this contract that was posted is not ours. Is that what I'm hearing you say? It's just a model? I just want to make sure I heard everything.
Yep, it's the standard council template. We use this for districts. The only thing that would make it specific to Clark County is adding in the blanks on start date and the name, et cetera. That is the standard one that we use for everyone.
Okay, and then, so there is no wiggle room to negotiate a couple of things that are within this contract?
It's I mean, so I would foresee potential on some of the language, especially if it's for technical requirements, but some of like the pricing and whatnot, that wouldn't be negotiated.
Okay, because
But I can get full clarification if you have specifics.
yeah, because here's my question here. On our board, a unanimous vote is usually only done on a consent agenda or something that we all agree on. And so some of this pricing that is calling for a unanimous vote concerns me. And I just want to make sure that I put that on the record because it's out of the ordinary. Obviously, we'd probably have more discussion on it and talk about it, but I'm not quite sure why that stipulation would be put into a contract. That's all.
Yep. And I can add some context there. And that's one thing that we would not change. And that's something we treat all of our districts that we've worked with over the years the exact same way with that exact same. When we haven't flexed it, we can't flex that. But the heart of this is to do exactly what you are referring to. It's to encourage conversation and get the board to really discuss this and decide whether or not to move forward and hopefully move forward unanimously based on what this framework can be and what it can mean for your school district. And so it's exactly for that purpose, for boards to be able to have that type of conversation and then make a decision in that space.
Okay,
also, great. Just a note, one more quick note on that is that the contract doesn't require a unanimous vote. Like you could still vote it and it not be unanimous. But we have just found that when boards aren't on the same page about the work, it takes a lot more staff time from both the council side and the coach side to support, hence the additional $20,000.
Okay. So this is for staff work. Got it.
This is for, yeah. So like, and to be clear, staff from the council side.
Right. No,
yes.
I understand. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, President Garcia Morales.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. I believe we have a couple of other colleagues in the queue. Trustee Zamora?
Do you want to go?
I know, but I was going to see if she had. I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah, you can go ahead.
Me? Okay. Trustee Brooks actually sparked a question for me. I want to make sure if we're spending time and money on this, that there isn't any gaps. So my question is, because this timeline presented hypothetically is up to August 2025, by that time we have gone through one election, we have gone through, new appointed folks. As this happens, who will be the person catching the folks up on all the work we've done? Would it be the Council of Great City Schools or would it be the board?
Yep. So we will be along for the ride, the entire ride, regardless of who sits in the seats. And we will continue to work with that. However, part of this timeline actually includes the board and the district building a system to where it can catch up both new board members, prospective board members, and generally the community. So that is built in to be a continued training wheel. So eventually when the council is no longer here, the board can continue to keep that up or the school district can keep that up. But we will be there every step of the way throughout the contract to help with that process and help with those onboarding.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I have one more question, if that's okay. On average, how many times have you all had to travel while doing these things?
It's really mostly driven by the nature of the board and what the board is asking for. Some boards want more travel. We try to minimize travel wherever possible to save costs. There are a few things that would be necessary to do in person, like the workshop to kick off and work on building that team awareness, building the shared language, and potentially some of the goal setting and priority setting workshops. But otherwise, and sometimes boards request other types of sessions, or that we want to do a training for staff or community and want us to do it, and if we want to do it in person. But we usually defer to what the districts are looking for there. So I would say on average, it's maybe 2 to 4 times a year in person, but that can be less, that can be more, but there's at least 2 times in the first 6 months that would be for the major parts around setting, doing the initial workshop, and then setting the goals and priorities. And then I think most of the other stuff can be taken care of virtually like this.
I have a follow-up, if that's okay. Just because it's 2,500 per person per trip, how many people usually join when it's a trip?
Yeah, just to be clear, that is the max that is allowable. It is oftentimes very much less than that, I think. But it is 1 to 2 usually.
Thank
And
you.
again, it is all dependent on
Us.
what is requested by the board.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Ben, and thank you, Trustee Zamora. I think she's jumping in there as Trustee Guzman's spot tonight and stealing my questions, but doing a good job of it. Yes, there was one great point that I think that Trustee Brooks brought up, and also brought up the same thing with Trustee Zamora, and that was maybe an expedited timeline, because in less than 5 months, we will have 4 new appointed members. So I think that that question that she asked is very relevant, to our onboarding and how that would work out and who would be responsible for that. So I do still have some, I'm going to be honest, I do still have some concerns about that timeline and how that would be arranged, because I don't want to overstep into our next item, President Garcia Morales. So I think that Trustee Zamora covered a lot of that already. So I just want to thank you, Ben. One tiny point there when you said that this would not be a new model, and just checking the hyperlink again, we are all, of course, up here focused on student outcomes. We may not always agree on the methodology, but we do, that is our goal. So I know that the hyperlink does go to student-focused outcomes. So I just want to confirm again what you had said previously, that this would just be kind of a framework, is I believe how you worded it, and it would not be a new model. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, and we know that. I mean, I have experience serving on a school board. I do so currently. AJ has experience. I believe, and we believe, that all of you want what is best for students, and I haven't met a board member who is otherwise. What we can do with this framework and our goal is to help you all clarify your priorities and really focus on those for the benefit of accomplishing what you say is most important. So it is a framework. We do not have a prescribed, this is the model to do. You all are driving this. We are just here as guides.
Thank you so much, Ben, for the clarification. I do appreciate it. That was all I had, President.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, thank you for this rich conversation and discussion and questions regarding the timeline, and even just our shared desires to continue to move the work forward. I can't help but to think about this work really being a setting up future boards, right? The work that we're going to invest in now, it is an investment in time and energy, and quite frankly, investment in the board president's time. There's at least 15 items here that hopefully with the help of either the officers or a committee, that we're able to move this work forward, and given that there are some time constraints, and hoping to set up again whatever our future board looks like, it will be set up, continue to be set up for success. We all know some of us know what it's like to come into a board with limited training and insight. Luckily, the majority of the board did come in with training, and thanks to the board that prepared us for that. But some members did not get that, and so what I just want to caution us, and really just know that, not just a caution, but a request for us to seriously consider this item. You have my commitment to carry this work forward, and I hope that I have yours as well. Okay, Ben, is there any other thoughts that you have for us as we transition into the next item?
I just want to sincerely thank all of you for your time, both meeting with me individually and for the work you do on behalf of all of the students and families of Clark County. If I can be helpful, you all have my contact information. You can feel free, if you have other thoughts as you read through this, reach out to me directly. What we will be doing is taking some of the feedback here, making a few minor adjustments. I know I have one more meeting this week, and then providing you a second draft that kind of takes into account any feedback you have here. So please continue to send me your questions, any feedback you have, and we look forward to connecting with you all again very soon.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you again, colleagues, for this discussion. My goal and my intention is to bring this item back for an action the last board meeting in August. All right. Moving on to item 2.02, Assembly Bill 175 of the 82nd session of the Nevada Legislature. This is a discussion and updates regarding the AB 175. And I've included item 2.02A, which is a letter that has been sent to municipalities for your reference. So I want to point to that. There's a couple of things that I want to, as we frame and prepare for this discussion, colleagues, again, this is not an action item. The intention here is to discuss our planning and our path forward to implement this this bill, or this law, excuse me, and also discuss a little bit, provide additional context to the origins of AB 175, or the intent of AB 175, and how we have already planned to move forward in implementing it as we continue to as we move forward with as this bill has now become law. We have been asked by members of our community various questions regarding AB 175 and its implementation, and I've shared 4 questions with you in advance of today's meeting to consider and reflect on, including what level of involvement, if any, should school board members have as it relates to appointees for municipalities? What traits or qualities should appointees have in order to engage meaningfully in board governance? Number 3, what information does the Board of Trustees need from municipalities to field questions about the appointments? Number 4, what strategies can the board use to inform the community of the responsibilities of municipality appointees? Okay, these are all reflecting points, and I invite us to have a conversation about these questions. And so as you prepare to jump in here in the queue, I just want to point out that item 2.02A is a letter that was sent to the Clark County Commissioners, the City of Las Vegas, the City of Henderson, City Council of Henderson, City Council of Las Vegas, City Council of North Las Vegas, and County Commissioners. I received one response from the County Commissioners, and you see in my letter notifying me that this appointment would be going to one of the commissioners. I have not received notification or communication from the other councils. As you can see in my letter, I'm very clear about the expected to begin date, which is January 2024, and an oath of office taking place on January 2nd. We're requesting that the non-voting members be prepared for that oath of office on January 2nd, 2024. We also ask for their appointment, for them to notify us of their appointment between October 3rd and December 2nd, 2023. There will be training that takes place, hopefully with the help of the council and some of our expertise from trainings that new members have taken and participated in regarding the school district and board governance, along with the Nevada Association of School Board Annual Conference, which is exclusively for Board of Trustees on December 1st through the 2nd here in Las Vegas. Okay. So colleagues, at this time, I'd like for us to discuss some of these questions along with any additional insight that you may have as we prepare to bring on members, appointed members from local municipalities in adherence of AB 175. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to confirm, and I did have a chance before I came to meetings today, to look over the bill again and the 3 amendments that apply to it. And it appears, and I just want to make sure, and it's kind of works right in with one of your reflecting points, is that the different entities, the 3, and I see our government affairs person here, and I know that she'll let me know if I'm off base, that there was no specific instruction given to the 3 cities and to the county as far as the process or the protocol that they were to use, and that was left up to them. I did not see, you said that there was something in here from the county that this was going to be given to one of the commissioners?
Thank you for that, Trustee Cavazos. You're absolutely correct, and thank you for noting and pulling the bill and the amendments that took place. You're absolutely right. The bill did not create a systemic process for all municipalities. It is up to municipalities to select. And you're right, I did receive notification from the county indicating that this appointment would be coming from Justin Jones.
Okay, and so I just want to say that in watching, not the commission meeting from yesterday, but the commission meeting that took place 2 weeks before that online, is that I did hear Commissioner Kirkpatrick ask, she kind of asked a question, she kind of made a comment, but that it sounded like that there was going to be a process that the city manager was going to be working on, and since that time, I don't know if the information that was given to you initially is still in place, and I have not responded to any of those.
Thank you for that, Trustee Cavazos. You're absolutely right there. This is an evolving process and very new for all of us. Dr. Jara, you're in the queue. Do you have something specific around this item?
Madam President, members of the board, I'd just like to, I know that our government relations expert who was in residency in Carson City through this process is available for any clarification, since she probably sat at every single hearing on this bill, if you would
Thank
so
you.
desire.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for igniting that. Please come on up, Ms. Haddad. Thank you, Dr. Jara. We will actually call on Patricia to share a little bit more about the, is that okay, to dive in? Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, yes, to hear what happened in Carson City, I can just tell you that in my conversations with 2 municipalities, the process may be different. If there is one in certain communities, I don't know what it will be, but you know, that's my initial conversations with some after your letter, but it's not, I don't know if there is a set, I would say, mapping of this election.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jara. Ms. Haddad, could you give us a broad overview of the of AB 175 and maybe mention the 3 amendments that were made to the bill?
Yes, thank you. Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations. So you'll have to give me a second on sort of recalling all of sort of the processes of amendments. It's been a while, and try to like purge some of that information from my brain after it ended. But so broad overview of AB 175 gives authority to the local municipalities and requires this to occur in Clark County, and it enables other school districts and boards of trustees throughout the state to do this, but specifically requiring for CCSD for non-voting appointed members appointed by the 3 most populous cities, and then by the county as well. That is essentially the extent of sort of the content. What it doesn't prescribe was the process for appointments, and in addition to that, there was quite a bit of discussion around qualifications for individuals that would be appointed, or that could be appointed, could be those appointed members. there was quite a bit of back and forth and discussion during the hearings on whether or not that was relevant, and ultimately was not something that was included in the bill. At the bill's origin, it included both Washoe County School District and Clark County School District, as this being a sort of requirement rather than an option. Washoe County School District was not ultimately included in the final version of the bill, but CCSD did indeed end up being under that requirement. So that was one sort of larger iteration of an amendment. In addition to that, initially, there was the ability of the non-voting appointed members to contribute to quorum for the board, and that they could, although they would be non-voting, and that they could also be a part of the executive, an executive member of the board. Those things, I believe, were removed. If I'm not, I believe so. Okay, and so that was another iteration of amendments, and then there was a final sort of technical change. And you'll have to forgive me, I would want to pull that up so I don't misrepresent what that ultimate technical change was, but I believe it had to do with, actually, I won't even surmise. I would give me a moment to go back and double check on that.
Thank you, Ms. Haddad. Colleagues, I see a couple of you in the queue. Hang tight for us, please, as we continue this discussion, if that's okay, Dr. Jara. Yep. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for asking that question, because sometimes when you're drafting policy, it does not provide the clarity that you may need, and so then you have to go back the next session and say, hopefully, right, there needs to be a systemic, uniformed process so that we have the high quality that we're looking for. And so I think this is one of those that we're hungry for clarity, but we may have to go back next session and seek it to make sure there's consistency. So just it's how sausage is made.
Trustee Zamora, thank you so much, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Patricia. I feel like we saw each other so much, and I appreciate and thank you for being at all those meetings and sitting there and just taking it all in. President Garcia Morales, I do appreciate the letter you did send over with the timeline. I have a comment just because I was grateful to be able to attend the NASB conference in November last year as a trustee-elect. I wasn't sworn in yet, but I did take in some good information, some good trainings from that. So I do appreciate you including, anyone who will be appointed to attend these as well. One of the questions you had sent over was, Madam President, was what strategies can the board use to inform the community of the responsibilities of municipality appointees? And I really want to tie this back into a conversation we previously have had about community meetings and their roles. I think this is a great opportunity for us to come back with these community meetings we were doing previously. And I think it was Trustee Brooks that said we should talk about what legislators do, what county commissioners have a role in, what trustees. I know Dr. Jara and I have been talking a lot. I would love to see possibly the community meetings happen before the appointed folks come in to really give them the information and let them know. I think a key part that we need to remind folks is that they're also non-voting members, because that's going to be really an interesting dynamic, if we're being honest. But just want to see if there's any plans. I would love to see a timeline more than anything for that specific community meeting and going around for roles.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. That's a great suggestion, and maybe something that we can work with the superintendent's office to build out in the month of, we're in August already, August, September. Okay. Thank you for that idea, and certainly even the ongoing engagement beyond these meetings. Perfect. Trustee Brooks?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate you being proactive. I know it's very hard to put 3 new people into a system with four, you're right, it's my bad. Maybe one of them's not new. I know it's very hard to plan for things that are beyond your control. So for me, I think prioritizing transparency about the process. We're not in control, but certainly we can ask people what the process is that they're going to use. I would probably, in the spirit of collaboration, would maybe even invite them here to present on what their process is. Maybe they can also present their appointee, let us know how the process went. I think as transparent as we can be, right now I'm fielding questions from people about how the process is going to work, what the legislative intent was. I'm actually not the person to answer either one of these questions. So I think it's important to know who to direct people to. Maybe we calendar something and say this is when they're going to present the outcome of what this looked like. I also think that we should have a very hard rule that the one thing that I think is clear with legislative intent is the municipalities are in charge of this process. So I don't think the district should involve itself. I don't think individual board members should involve themselves. I think they should step up. They should develop a fair and transparent process. And then they should appoint a professional human being that is not just a bomb thrower. If they don't, that's on them. But I think the community is ultimately the person that, the people collectively, who need to hold municipalities responsible for whatever decision they decide. Whatever this turns out to be will be based on their actions. And we can try to mitigate it as much as we want. But that they're going to have a central role to play. And if there's dissatisfaction, we've done our part. We've done our due diligence, we've done preparation. If people are dissatisfied, they can reach out to these bill sponsors, they can reach out to these municipalities.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks, and your suggestions are noted in terms of asking municipalities for, and we've asked for their, we've already asked for their, we've asked for their appointee. We can definitely go back and ask for clarity as we field questions. So you're absolutely right. Not just you, but none of us are involved, should be involved in the selection of their internal processes or even determining their internal processes. So it may be helpful for us as we're getting questions from the community how to redirect individuals who live in certain municipalities to benefit them. Yes, Trustee Brooks.
Thanks, and I want to clarify that it's not just the community members. If people who are responsible for these appointments reach out to individual members, we should allow them to handle this themselves among their boards. I don't want to insert ourselves in their process.
Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. We will. We should not be inserting ourselves in this process. This is from the bill is their process, even though the process is not defined or clearly defined yet. Trustee Cavazos, do you mind if I go to Trustee Guzman? Oh,
I wanted to see if Dr. Jara got my message that Trustee Guzman could not hear him the last time he spoke, so I didn't know if we could do something about it. And then I'll wait until everybody else speaks.
I believe Dr. Jara, Trustee Guzman, are you still on?
Yes, I am here, and it's okay. I wrote down my question. I'll just follow up with Dr. Jara, but thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for letting him know. I actually had similar comments as Trustee Brooks, so I want to thank you for wanting to be proactive. And my community is one of the ones that is going to be appointing, and so I will just watch the process, but I won't insert myself, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to ask, in the interest of moving things along here, which I know that you're a big fan of here, and we all are, Did you want to see if there was anything, because I wanted to defer to your reflections, which I think are good, and I had sent a communication that I really felt that number 1 and number 4 were really, really important, and then I didn't really know how much control we had over 2 and 3, so I just wondered if you had a sequence that you wanted us to maybe, instead of going on forever, just say, hey, and in relationship to number 2 or in relationship to number 4, here's a suggestion. I didn't know how you wanted to do that.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. I appreciate the organic nature of our conversation. It sounds like there's a general appetite to ensure that, and understanding that from question number 1 specifically, that as a board, we've agreed not to be involved in one, it's not our process. It's the appointees from municipalities will be appointed by the municipalities themselves and not by the Board of Trustees. Our level of engagement begins at communication and of expectations in terms of when to begin, and then the training leading up to once these individuals are selected by the municipalities. And then the engagement of their time once they serve in office, right? So I think number 1, from that perspective, seems to be already discussed. Number 2, Trustee Cavazos, I appreciate your comments in terms of the traits and qualities. We certainly, you're right, we do not have any, I think we've all shared that there's really no control in terms of that process and who the individual, the municipality select. Ultimately, there are some, what we know, and that may be part of the strategies that we need to continue to discuss with municipalities, is with the level of commitment that's required on the Board of Trustees. Trustee Cavazos, did you have some additional thoughts around that item?
A very brief follow-up. Thank you very much, Madam President. I just wanted to make clear that the one question they keep asking us, I've had people say, are these advisory board members? Are they trustees? That they are trustees, but they cannot vote. And that the other thing was that that they will be included in everything that we are included in, having to do with the superintendent, closed meetings. I'm still worried about the seating chart because the ex-teacher is always an ex-teacher, but worried about that. But no, I think that those questions are really good, and I just wanted to put in a plug for Trustee Brooks's suggestion about that. I think it would be excellent, when the time comes, when I think the timeline you had said was October, December, that for them to be able to present us with a new trustee and for us to be introduced in a formal way. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Great, perfect. I believe that there should be a public discussion, and this is to Trustee Zamora's point in terms of who does what, and then maybe even in terms of the Board of Trustees. We heard a little bit of this from Ben's presentation, but what makes an effective school board member, and again, based off of our own knowledge and experience of serving on the Board of Trustees, the level of commitment and time and energy that's required to be an informed board member, to make informed decisions on behalf of the school district requires at minimum 1 work session, 2 board meetings a month, plus all of the reading and reading of supplemental materials that are attached to these meetings, along with ongoing barrage of emails that we receive as we're receiving updates from either a range of issues and or as we're planning and preparing kind of our work. I think it's important for the community to also be aware, to know, to recognize as these individuals are being appointed, or if an individual chooses to accept an appointment to the Board of Trustees through their municipality, that the time commitment is not a, just show up to a meeting. There is actually a lot of preparation that takes place in order to have be part of rich discussions and progress forward. And I'm not able, and certainly as a president, I believe I have a different level of time commitment. However, that doesn't mean that members don't have that same level of time. It may be, for example, I may not attend community events the way that other members do, but your time in those, that requires you to be away from either your family commitments or your work commitments. It's just, I'm going on and on about something that we all know is true, but maybe we don't talk a lot about in terms of the level of time and commitment that's required on the Board of Trustees is a full-time role. Trustee Williams, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple points. One, I don't know, I'm torn on this whole conversation in general because I think it's really important to note that the more attention we give this to anybody that asks these questions, truly, our only job at this point is to point them to AB 175 and say, here, go read it, right? Because anything that we say to any of these municipalities or to members in the public could be viewed as us either not accepting the terms of the law, because it's the law, whether we like it or not, or us trying to persuade a certain type of individual to be on this board. That's not their role, and it's not our role to do that. So I think the more time we spend on this conversation, it actually just makes it look like we're fighting it because we don't like it, or we're trying to persuade the public to see it from a different point of view. So I would just reiterate that cautionary tale to all of you, to whoever you speak to going forward until these members are appointed to the board, that we don't have the rights to this. Like Trustee Brooks said, it was very specifically written in here that is the municipality and the commission, that's their role. However they want to pick their person, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they pick. It doesn't matter what that person currently holds as a title or anything like that. But I think that there's a lot of confusion as to what the role of these trustees will come on this board and do. And I want people to almost switch their views of it. I don't think that, and I'm trying to give the state the benefit of the doubt, I don't think they came on here to control the board, right? Because they didn't give them any rights to do so, right? They can't vote, they're not counted as a quorum, and they can't hold an executive position, right? So basically they're gonna sit here and they're gonna listen to everything they have to hear from the public and then from us and from the staff, and they're going to learn. And I think truly, if I'm giving the state the benefit of the doubt, while I think it's slightly backwards, but what they want to do is they want to understand what goes on behind these closed doors of the board. That totally makes sense to me. That makes complete sense. And being able to actually articulate that to them, as opposed to just seeing the seven of us up here and we're the big bad boogeyman that we don't like this or we don't like that or whatever. So I just, again, I don't know if we should be spending a ton of time on this conversation, because once they come on the board, at that point, it doesn't matter. My only question, my only comment, really truly wants to happen, desired end result, is that once they are appointed, because I don't even think that we should ask them to do that. I don't think that we should ask them to parade their appointment in here and say, this is your appointment, get used to it. I don't think we should do that. I think that they could send us an email, set up a meeting, we could set up a meet and greet, but I think if you parade individuals in front of the public, you submit them to all kinds of different things that they don't necessarily need to be submitted to yet, because we will have plenty of time. They'll have 4 years to introduce themselves to the public. So that's just my opinion. My only ask would be, once they're all appointed, all 4 of them, I wouldn't do it individually, but all 4 of them is just bring them in here with the 7 of us and let us actually have a meet and greet with these individuals. My only comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Appreciate your insight. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm taking the opposite approach, which is lean in. Lean in, be proactive, mitigate harm as much as I possibly can. Lots of research says this is a bad idea. And lots of research says you do not have a board with unequal power. Like it's a thing. So I would like the children in the district to not be harmed if I can help it. So I'm going to try to lean in. And my suggestion for this is my process would be I would contact them and I would let them know the time commitments, which I think that you did in your first letter. I would share peer-reviewed research about what makes an effective board member. And then I would tell them, here's a resource you can use to create your process and to determine what your appointment should look like. And then I would stay out of that part. I would, what? We can't share research? No. And then I would share the ethical constraints that the members are going to be expected. This is just guidelines, and this isn't you saying anything other than this is what the research says. And then I would invite them to come and present what their process is. I would invite them to introduce the person. If the intent is to create a collaborative relationship between the district and these municipalities, this is a step. Is it potentially a very bad step? Yes. The most I can do to mitigate this are these steps. So that's what I would want to do to minimize potential harm to kids.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Oh, there's a few things. Okay. I originally wanted to publicly give folks a timeline because this gave me a little bit of an anxiety attack thinking of the times, right? Because what it looks like is in 2024, we will have new appointed people. 2025, we will have new elected folks. 2027, we're going to have new elected. 2028 is new appointed. 2029 new elected. That's as far as I got because I was spiraling. So it looks like in 2026 would be the only year that we have a set board. So I definitely wanted to amplify that and highlight because as we're talking about process and systems and everything, it's really important to keep that in mind. I want to go back to a comment Trustee Williams said about just guiding folks to the bill. Our own team had difficulties trying to understand the bill, and I think we can do just a little bit to help our folks out and just give them a quick rundown of it, not spend our full energy, but at least give them a quick overview of it, because it was a very difficult bill, especially with all the amendments. Back to a comment Trustee Brooks said, I don't think we should give them guidelines of what a trustee should look like. These are folks who have appointed people before in their committees. It's part of their job. So I think it will kind of create a friction of, it looks like we're telling them what to do. Yeah. And that was all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Cavazos?
I would defer to Trustee Guzman to check in with her if you wanted to do that first. Want me to go ahead? Yeah, mine's very brief too. I think, and I'm going to defer to Ms. Haddad, who is the expert. As she said, she sat through all of this, and my condolences and everything. But I think the third amendment was from Senator Lang, having to do with the residency of the elected. Okay, I just want to check that. I have to agree with Trustee Zamora here that we don't need to spend all of our energy here, but I think in the interest of showing that we are conducive, whether we were not in favor of this, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we all signed that letter that we were not in favor of this bill, but it is law now, and so I think that for us to even try to even have the appearance, or not try, but have the appearance of dictating to the municipalities and to the county who have been tasked with this responsibility, that it would not be a good look for us, is what I'm saying. Are we hoping that we are going to end up with qualified folks that maybe have a solid educational background, or that we can see that they are bringing something to the table? But I have to respectfully disagree that the only thing they're going to do is just sit here and learn what's going on behind the scenes, or as my esteemed colleague and former Assemblywoman Trustee Bustamante Adams said, in making the sausage that we make, I would say that since they are going to be allowed to have one-on-ones with the superintendent, be in closed sessions, be in all of our work sessions, all of our meetings, that they are going to be, I guess, they're not going to be social media influencers, but they're going to be influencers. They're going to be allowed to hear all this, partake of all of our discussions, and be able to talk to the 7 elected members. So I don't think they're just going to be here and sit here and learn. I think that they are going to be people that, as our president rightfully pointed out, this is not just a job where it's a minimum amount of time. There's quite a bit of work that goes into it. So I'm hoping that they are going to be people that will be committed to that time frame and to doing that work. So basically, that's all I have to say, and that I hope that we can be a help to this by just kind of letting them do their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to clarify my comment about this research. That was specific because some of these people who actually are going to do these appointments have actually asked this question. So in lieu of saying nothing, I don't know, maybe you send them a link to some research. I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't want to guide them, but I also don't want to say, like there's no information that exists. Of course they have Google. Of course they absolutely could do it. I'm 100% negotiable on it. The reason that it was added to my list was based on actual experiences already occurring.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Zamora?
I just have a suggestion. I see your point, and if someone has reached out and asked, I think we can do an email just kind of saying, kind of like what Joe does, right? Kind of just saying, hey, this question, this was brought up to my attention. I'm actually sharing this out to you all, just in case you also need it, right? So it's given to everyone, but not signaling, putting someone on the spot. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, Trustee Brooks, that's it. Okay. Trustee Guzman? Do you have any additional questions or comments at this time?
Well, I just, as someone who sat on the AB 469 committee and was not a voting member, but was a part of all of the conversations and things that had to do with that specific committee, I remember when I was listening to these hearings, they said that they wanted. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod said that she wanted people that would be able to provide us insight and a different perspective, because there weren't people on the board that had any educational background, and I was sitting there. So I feel like they are going to try to find somebody who is going to bring something to the table, and just like we sent me to the AB 469 committee, trying to bring something to the table. So, so I feel like that's their thought process. I'm hopeful that that's exactly what will occur. But I am glad to have the conversation so that because we all have a different perspective on this bill. And by having the conversation, maybe we can figure out exactly what the point was for the bill, because we all have different perspectives, but not one of us can figure out why. So anyway, that's my thought process on that. And I'm looking forward to meeting and greeting with these people that are supposed to help us out. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. I want to just ground ourselves in the fact that we are not legislators. We did not create this bill. We do not know the intent of this bill. What we can do is our very best to interpret the law, and also with the guidance of counsel, ensure that we are following the law based off of what we have. And as Trustee Bustamante Adams shared, this is the first iteration of this law, and we get to kind of create processes for us to help us be successful and ultimately help these individuals who will be joining our board be successful as well. I heard a couple of things to summarize our conversation and then move on to the next item, is that there is a continued desire to build a relationship with on our end with our municipalities, in the sense of there being additional clarity in terms of what a training schedule would look like for us, a schedule for us in terms of what Trustee Zamora, you mentioned, community conversations that would help us have discussions around who does what. I heard the importance of a meet and greet once the appointees have been selected, and how important that relationship will be for us to build with the individuals who are appointed to our board. And then finding a way to keep the lines of communication open with municipalities so that they have, if one municipality is asking us a question, they all have the response to these, if maybe someone else is thinking the same thing but won't ask us. So and make sure that everybody has uniform responses in terms of the questions that we're receiving. And I take all this feedback very seriously, colleagues. We want to, of course, continue to be responsive to this law and ultimately create a relationship that will benefit our students and families. So thank you for indulging me in this conversation and for your feedback today. Our points are very well taken. Open lines of communication while also not micromanaging this process, because that's not our intent. Okay, great, colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Haddad. Appreciate your time. All right, colleagues, we are now going to move on to item 3.01, that's public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. At this time, we have one person who has signed up in advance. And what do I have to do? I do, as I continue to, here we go. As I continue to open up this item, if anybody in the public would like to speak, please plan to submit a yellow card. Otherwise, I don't see any other yellow cards. We're going to open this up to Ms. Rakisha Sconiers. Please help me say your last name correctly into the record.
Sconiers, that works. My son is autistic and disabled, and he attended Katz Elementary in the pre-K program for disabled children. My son is nonverbal and has extreme food aversions. On the first day of school, I took him to school with what he chooses to eat. He was at the time 3 years old and chooses to eat and drink his meals from a bottle. His teacher, Mrs. Azar, was full aware of my son's dietary needs while he's at school. For breakfast, he was required to be given his bottle because he's nonverbal. He will never ask her for it. And she was also to give it to him for lunch. Because CCSD Child Find filled out my son's IEP wrong and did not implement the feeding program for him, Katz Elementary took it upon themselves to starve a 3-year-old child who is fully dependent on a bottle. The principal, Kelly Reed, at the end of the school day on September the 7th, was pulling my son by his arm while antagonizing him with his bottles. His bottle was full from breakfast and his lunch bottle, which means he starved for 8 hours, and no adult at that school, not the RN, not his teacher, not the aide, did not decide that they should call his mother at lunch and say, hey, we presented your child with a school lunch that we knew full well he would not consume because he has a real food aversion. He runs scared from food. So these adults allowed my toddler to starve on the CCSD campus. So I had to pull up and witness this principal paying keep away with a child who was showing her that he was starved and needed his bottles. When I entered into the office and I asked her, why do you have my son's breakfast and lunch cups that he brought home from school? She yelled at me and said, he's 3 years old. He shouldn't be drinking from a bottle anyway. Bottles aren't allowed on a CCSD campus. She bullied my son, verbally, mentally antagonized a 3-year-old, and yet she's able to keep her position at that job. It's because people are not coming forth and getting this situation that she did to my child recognized. I emailed you guys, I called you guys several times to tell you guys what she did to my son was bullying. I thought there was a zero bullying policy at CCSD, but when it comes to autistic disabled children, you will allow them to go 8 hours without consuming anything, not water, not food, not a snack, and you think that that's okay. It's never okay to starve a child who cannot even verbalize that he's hungry. And adults witness this and will not take responsibility for it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are not able to have a back and forth dialogue with you at this time.
That's fine. I just wanted to go
Please.
on record publicly that CCSD is allowing Kelly Reed to bully
Ma'am.
disabled children and are not doing anything about it. And it was witnessed by several other staff members, as well as the school RN and my son's
Ma'am,
pre-K
your-
teacher.
Your time is.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Expired. Thank you. At this time, you're welcome to take your sweet baby off. Thank you.
And I'll be at the next meeting when all the people are here.
All right, colleagues. We're going to move on to item 4.01. That is the upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees this Friday, August 4th at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. At this time, we're going to move on to 5.01. That's adjournment. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Brooks.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you. Colleagues, the motion passes 7-0. The time is 5:42 p.m. Thank you for meeting today.